Welcome to On the Vineyard, a weekly podcast from the Vineyard Gazette Media Group on Martha's Vineyard. I'm senior writer Louisa Huffstadter, sitting in this week for your regular host, publisher Monica Brady-Meyerhoff. On the Vineyard is sponsored by Crane Appliance. As usual, the island tilted toward Edgartown for the 4th of July parade and fireworks. This is what it sounded like from the Vineyard Gazette's old red truck as we rolled up Main Street in the parade last Friday. Saturday was the annual Tisbury Street Fair in Vineyard Haven, and there was some unscheduled excitement on Chappaquiddick Sunday when a sightseeing biplane made a controlled emergency landing at remote Cape Pogue just before noon. We'll have more about that story in a moment. Also this week, the Martha's Vineyard Community Foundation announced the 41st winners of its annual Creative Living Award, which recognizes islanders who work and volunteer to make the vineyard a better community. This year, the award goes to a West Tisbury couple we know well here at the Vineyard Gazette, Reverend Kathleen Baker of First Congregational Church and her husband, our own editor-in-chief, Bill Evell. And speaking of Bill, that's the sound of our historic press printing the Vineyard Gazette here in Edgartown. That means it's time to go upstairs to the newsroom and check in with the man himself and the reporters who've been covering this week's news. Bill, congratulations to you and Kathleen on your well-deserved Creative Living Award. What else is happening on the Vineyard?
Well, thank you very much for that, Louisa. It really was a nice honor. All right, now we are turning to Ethan Genter, who has a dramatic story with a happy ending from last weekend when a biplane had to make an emergency landing on Chappaquiddick. Ethan, tell us what happened.
Thank you, Bill. So about just before noon on Sunday, Mike Credo was flying his signature red biplane. A lot of people have probably seen it fly around the island. And he was up with two young women, one 21-year-old from Long Island, Sarah Sullivan, and her cousin Poppy Weiss, an 11-year-old. They went out to go see Nantucket. They were looking for sharks over the ocean. And when they were kind of coming back around, they heard Mike go, uh-oh, which wasn't a great sign. He had an engine failure, engine issues, and apparently he's kind of eyed that spot over on Cape Pogue. He kind of landed on the bay side of Cape Pogue near the elbow, landed it right on the sand, and everyone walked away happy, scratch-free, and the plane also took off later again that day, seemingly with no real issues.
Yeah, just such an incredible story on so many levels, and thank God that it was Mike Credo who had so much experience. But what was amazing, not soon after the whole event, the passengers checked in with the Gazette to say, hey, we're here and we'd love to talk about the story, which was, you'd think people would be so shaken up, but they were really just so appreciative of what Mike was able to do.
Yeah, not just them. I talked to first responders. Chief Chris Dolby over here in Edgartown said, his skill and familiarity with that plane and this area just really, he knew exactly where to go on the sandy strip, how to do it. The girls sent us a picture of them smiling next to the plane. And if you think about it, a few meters this way, a few meters that way, this could have been a very different story. We could be talking about a tragedy right now.
Yeah. And even the police, it's hard to get out to Chappie. You got to take the Chappie ferry. They had radioed ahead to check in with Chappie residents to be on the scene, correct?
Yeah, I talked to a Cape Pogue landowner who said, we were out there and we saw them. The trustees kind of checked in and helped drive the girls back to the Dyke Bridge where they met with police to kind of talk about the incident. It's all being investigated by the FAA, but it just seems like right now it's just an engine issue. And Mike was able to get the plane back up in the air and flew it back to Katama where they do the sightseeing tours.
Yeah, incredible. Now turning to not the Wayback Machine, but to the Yearback Machine. Ethan also has a story this week. It's a year later on July 13th of the blade breaking out at the Vineyard Wind site. So you took us back to what happened and where the industry is today.
Yeah, a lot of people remember the blade breaking and kind of the pictures we saw, unfortunately for Nantucket, of giant pieces of fiberglass floating in the water and washing up on the beaches. So we looked how things have changed both in the investigation and for Vineyard Wind and on the national stage for offshore wind. It's very different with Donald Trump as president. He's had a long animosity against offshore wind energy, and right now he's kind of halted any future projects, any permitting for that at a federal level. Ones that are in the pipeline are all kind of seemingly keeping their head below ground, not to attract any attention and kind of keep things going on that front.
Yeah, that was the tricky part of your story. A lot of people didn't want to talk. They just want to be quiet and not sort of say anything. So you had to sort of dig around to find out what was going on.
Yeah, we did public records requests on all kinds of things, but the federal agency that is investigating what caused the Vineyard Wind blade to break hasn't really said yet why that happened. The company, the manufacturer, has offered up their own explanation that's not been confirmed or denied by the federal government. So we're still kind of trying to learn exactly what happened out there that day. But in the meantime, Vineyard Wind has been allowed to restart construction. They had their first turbine producing power again earlier this year. So they are seemingly kind of chugging along again. We don't hear from them much anymore. Milestones that used to be celebrated are now kind of not commented on or not even mentioned. So it's very different.
Yeah, and so to sum up, it seems like those that were in the works can keep moving quietly, and then the new ones, they're sort of, in a waiting pattern. Is that true?
Yeah, a company like South Coast Wind kind of had basically almost all of the sign-offs, but still needed a few things. They're kind of caught in the crossfire here, and they're saying, we're going to be delayed by several years. And, advocates for renewable energy say if you kind of zoom out from the political situation, the world's getting hotter. These are energy sources that they say are needed to kind of get us to our energy goals and push back on climate change.
All right. Thanks for getting us up to speed on that subject. Appreciate it, Ethan.
Find out more about these stories and all the other island news on our website, which is free and offers translations into 5 languages at vineyardgazette.com. An award-winning play about the filming of Jaws has opened at the Martha's Vineyard Performing Arts Center in Oak Bluffs. The Shark is Broken is playing at 7:30 p.m. Wednesdays through Sundays, with an additional 2 p.m. matinee on Thursdays. I saw the show on opening night, and it's a lot of fun. The actors and the production design are equally terrific. Camp Jabberwocky's latest summer session begins this week, and the camp also has a new red bus decorated with colorful Alice in Wonderland characters in the Jabberwocky tradition. Originally called the Martha's Vineyard Cerebral Palsy Camp, Camp Jabberwocky was founded in 1953 by a Fall River social worker, originally from England, named Helen Lamb, also known as Hellcat.
At that time, nothing was being done for cerebral palsy people. They didn't know enough about it to do anything about it. So all descended upon the parents. And I could see that the mothers were really worn out looking after these youngsters. So the first thing was to get somewhere to take these children. And that summer I was on Oak Bluffs Beach with my own children, my 3 children. They were running around in the water, and I just sat on the beach and I thought, what an excellent place this island would be for a camp for the handicapped.
Camp Jabberwocky founder Helen Hellcat Lamb speaking in 1995. You can hear her entire 8-minute interview on YouTube via the Martha's Vineyard Museum Oral History channel. Our theme music is from island composer and musician Michael Hayden, also known as the guitarist in the opening scene of Jaws. This week's podcast was edited by Margaret Evans. If you like our show, please follow On the Vineyard so you won't miss an episode. Thanks to our sponsor, Crane Appliance. Their experts listen to your needs and help you choose the right appliances for your home. Crane Appliance, they call the Cape and Islands home. I'm Louisa Huffstadter. Thanks for joining us on The Vineyard. We'll be back next week with another podcast, and you can catch up on past episodes anytime at vineyardgazette.com.